Hey guys, it's Kate. Let's work on some doodles together today. So I unfortunately did not hit the record button when I was doing the watercolor, but I still wanted to share the doodles with you in case you wanted to sit and watch or join me today and make some doodles of your own. So hopefully you have some paper and pen handy and you're gonna relax and make some doodles with me. I sped this up just a little bit, but I did record the whole doodle process and I did 3 more sheets of paper, this time with a purple and yellow theme. And I really liked doing it last time with, just not having to worry about making wrong marks or ruining my piece of paper. So I did 3 so I could just be more free. And so I grabbed my stencil and I am just going around the outside of natural looking circles that kind of happened with the watercolor. And then I'll be filling in with my pen. And so with my pen, I'm just going around and finding the areas where some of the watercolor ends, and blends into another color. And I'm making some loops on the inside, almost like little rainbows or something like that. And I'm being pretty loose with my marks and not really minding too much if they're a little bit wobbly lines. I'm just relaxing and having fun practicing my mark making. I hope you're all having a great day today. So I'm done with, when I get done with the inside of the circles, I start working on the outside and just doing similar marks, but without the circles themselves. So I'm just doing sort of those loops and letting them blend together and go through at different angles, just anywhere where I can find it. Almost like, I guess, that reverse coloring, which is pretty fun. And this is sort of that first exercise to get just loosened up and comfortable just writing on the paper no matter what it looks like. I'm not really thinking about any type of composition or anything like that, just making the marks. So next I grab my metallic marker from Crafter's Square. I got this at the Dollar Tree and it's really not metallic at all. So if you have a Dollar Tree near you and you have access to these, don't expect it to be metallic, but it really writes nicely. It's very opaque and it's got plenty of ink in it. So I've been really enjoying using it for different doodling projects and mark making. So I think there are a few colors available. I've got a couple of different shades of this sort of rose gold or pinkish color, and I also have a gold and a blue. The gold I haven't pulled out as much, but the blue is also really nice, and they're very pigmented inks. They are not waterproof once they dry, so just keep that in mind. So I'm going around making just some notches on the outside of the circles, and it started to remind me a bit of a clock or a gear once I started making the marks. and then just looking at other places where I can add something. And so I end up adding some more around the loops that I drew on the outside, so that I'd have that mark in more places than just the inside of the few circles that are in the middle. And so I'm just looking at places I can add. And I'm kind of carrying that little sort of rainbowy motif outside of the circles too. And then I wanted to add a little bit more little marks, so I just did some dots around these little rainbow shapes on a few of them. And then the white Uniball pen. And so this one, I wanted to just do some sort of little circly marks. So I started in the bottom right corner and just kind of grouped them together, and then I had them kind of traveling up through the middle and out the left. And I tried to vary the sizes a little bit, but have them all very close together. And so once I finish up these circles, I'll call it good on this piece and start my second one. And so for the second one, I started going in right away with the white Uniball, just making some sort of abstract flowy shapes, which actually once I got done really reminded me of a fish. So this could have gone in a very different direction than what it did, but I was still pretty happy with the result. And I just kept working with the same pens and markers. So I grabbed that Crafter's square marker again too for this, but I really just worked with that and the white pen instead of black on this one. And so I'm just following each of those shapes from corner to corner and making kind of like little flowy lines. And I really like the texture that that creates, and I want to play around more with that in other pieces too, and following along different shapes. And you can see some areas where the pen doesn't seem to want to write that much on the watercolor, but I was able to go over the lines and it wasn't a big deal. Do you see the fish yet? Should be coming into view. I should have put a couple of eyes down at the bottom left-hand corner. So at first I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do here. I just started making some little lines, and I liked the high contrast against the yellow of the watercolor background. But then once I got far enough up, I started to just kind of connect all the lines and make these little random geometric shapes that were all kind of sticking together. And I ended up liking that. I might have done a couple of things differently, looking back at this one, but I did like the final result. I might have just made a few small changes, but it was a lot of fun to do, and again, just practice mark making. I'm coming out and adding some more to the bottom as well and moving that through the piece. And then I wanted to break up the pattern just a little bit, so I started making a couple of little chunks that maybe would have flown off or were sort of spread out. And I liked that a lot better than just having the blob of shapes. So there's always little adjustments that you can do when you're working on something and you're not quite liking the direction. You can always try something different. And that was pretty much it on that, except I just added a little bit more of the white highlights with my pen going through there in just some random areas to give it a little bit more texture. Especially where that marker was on a darker background and blended in, I just wanted to make it pop out a little bit more. And then I liked it so much, I just kept going. And then I thought, oops, I missed a spot. So I went back to the middle of that group. And so for my last one, this was where I think I finally loosened up enough. And I was looking at that yellow box and I was just thinking, man, I just want to turn that into something. I have really liked making sort of these pops of gold in the watercolors, and I've done it a couple of times, and then I thought to myself, well, I could turn it into a flower vase, and so that's what I did. So I ended up making these really sketchy florals, and I turned the yellow box into a vase. So obviously it's not realistic and it's very sketchy, but I really, really liked how this one turned out. So I'm sketching some flowers from the side and from the front, and then I end up adding in some little leaves for an arrangement. And this was my favorite one. I really loved how it turned out. And I actually ended up doing a couple more things like this, kind of playing with that sketchy flower theme. And I got to do my favorite, my leaves. But if you asked me what kind of flower this is, I couldn't tell you. It's just a doodly flower. And like you can see, I'm being very messy with my lines, but I actually really liked how that looked. And definitely something that I'll be doing more of to just experiment with and see where it goes. And I'm just sort of going around putting things where it seems like they should go. And other than that, not really minding too much. And I'm adding just a little bit of lines to the sides of the vase just to give it a little bit more texture. I'm adding a few more leaves on around the outside, and then also adding a little bit of more texture and detail to some of the leaves that I've drawn already, just to make it look a little more full. And then I go in with my white uniball, and I start with the center of the flowers, but then I wanted to move out and add a little bit of highlights to the leaves also. So I just kind of go over a few of the areas, especially with the darker watercolor in the background to add that contrast and texture. And I'm not trying to follow the lines, exactly or anything, just add some marks. And then I ended up doing it with a few of the flower petals too. And I just really loved it. This is my favorite one. And so then I wanted to add a little sparkle and some of my gold circles. So I brought out the paint marker and I just went around the edge, and I really wanted to put some in that little, that reddish sort of crescent on top. And so then that was calling it done. So I hope you enjoyed this today, and until next time, keep creating.